Hi there! In today's video, I'm continuing with my ChatGPT.c project, in which I'm creating a ChatGPT clone in C using Raylib. Now, here's what we have so far in 2 different videos. If you haven't seen those, then you might want to go back and see those first. But if I build and run this project, here I have my beautiful ChatGPT interface. And I can say hello, and I will get an answer back from ChatGPT. So this is actually connecting to the ChatGPT API. And if I say, what is 1 plus 1? It will answer me, 1 plus 1 equals 2. Now, in today's video, what I would like to do is I would like to solve this issue. If I say something like, write hello world in C, it will actually write hello world in C, but the line height is not quite proper here. Also, if I say, how do I create a web application in Rust? It will answer me with a very long answer, and we do not have any word wrapping or any scrolling. So this looks horrible. So what I would like to do is I would like to make it so that it will actually wrap the words. And then I would also like to have a scrolling ability so that it doesn't go over the bottom of the screen. So let's try and do that. So to test this out, I am going to add some sample messages to the UI when we open the application, so that I don't have to use my ChatGPT tokens every time to do that. So let's do this. We have this function called message list add. So how about we do something like this? For int I equals 0, I less than 50, I plus plus. And we are going to add a message to the message list. And we are going to say something like, hello. So now if we open the program again, it actually got a segmentation fault, which is because I added this in the wrong place. It should be outside of the while loop, because we have a limit of 255 messages. And if I had it in the while loop, it will keep adding 50 messages for every frame. So now it should work proper. So now we have these messages here. So let's make it scroll as the first. So how do we do that? Well, when we draw the message list, we can use Raylib's beautiful function called start scissor mode, begin scissor mode. And what scissor mode does is it will cut out a specific portion of the screen or cut out the other parts. So it will only modify the specific part that we specify, if that makes any sense. So what we can do if we open this is that we want to specify this area here as the scissor area. So the other places will not be shown, even if we try to draw something on it. So what is this area? Well, the X position will be the width of the sidebar plus the UI gap, and the Y position will be just the UI gap. And then the width will be the whole width of the screen minus the UI gap from here, minus the UI gap from here, and minus the width of the sidebar. And the height is going to be the height of the whole thing minus UI gap down here and UI gap up here, and the height of the message box minus the UI gap between here. So let's do that. We have to pass in the X, which I actually use here X already for this message list. So what should we call this? I will just add them directly here without any variables. So X is going to be sidebar width plus UI gap, which is actually the same X as here. And the Y will be UI gap. So in fact, I could use the X and Y directly. I might do this. But then the width is going to be, I guess I can then use width and height as variables. And I can say int width is going to be get render width minus sidebar width minus UI gap times 2. And the height is going to be get render height minus the UI gap times 3. So up and down, and then between the message box and the message area. and we will minus the message input height. So if we do that, and we also, what do we have to do? Why do we get an error? Can I not have a comma there? I cannot have a comma there. And then after this, I am going to say end scissor mode. So now if we compile and run this again, we do not see anything past this point. But of course we can't scroll this, we only cut out the other areas. So how do we scroll? Well, in Raylib there is a thing called get scroll something. It is called mouse wheel move. Get mouse wheel move. And this will return a float that is either positive or negative based on if we scroll up or down. So what we can do is we can say that we will have a static int current scroll, which will be 0 at first. And then I can actually move this up here. And then I can say that the current scroll plus equals get mouse wheel move. And then we can add to the y, in fact only here in the scissor, scissor mode needs to always be from the same place. But in the y position of where we are drawing the messages, we have to add the current scroll or subtract. I'm not quite sure which one it is. But if we now build this again and we scroll, we can actually scroll, but very slowly. So let's add some sort of scroll speed, and let's divide it. Let's find scroll speed to 10. And now if we scroll, we can actually scroll it. Now I want to be a little bit, so let's put 17. That's pretty nice. Maybe it's too fast. No, it's fine. Actually, it's still pretty slow. So I will make it even faster. It just looked faster when I was scrolling here. It looks really fast because we have the same word every time, but here it is very slow. Now, it's like snapping kind of weirdly every time, so we should implement some sort of smoothness to this scroll, but I'm not quite sure how to implement that. We could do something like this. I actually saw Coding create smooth scrolling, and it was very simple, but I don't remember how he did it. So one thing is that we could create another static int, or in fact float scroll, and set it to 0, and then set the scroll to plus equal this, and set the current scroll to plus equal the scroll, and set the scroll to minus equal, or actually, is there times equal in C? 0.9. Now, maybe I have some extra variables here, but let's see if that will do something. It will in fact do something. So now if I scroll, it will scroll pretty nicely. So we actually implemented some sort of smooth scrolling. So it will keep scrolling a little bit after I stop. And that looks pretty nice. And this looks pretty nice. I like that quite a lot. Maybe it's a bit too fast. So I'm going to set it to 20. And if I now scroll, it looks pretty cool. But now we can scroll all the way like infinitely, which is not that nice. So how do we fix this issue? Well, at the top, it's pretty easy to fix because we just say that if the position is more than 0 or more than the UI gap, then it will not move anymore. So we can say if current scroll is greater than UI gap, then current scroll is going to equal UI gap. So then if we build and run, then we cannot scroll anymore past the top, but we can still scroll down here. So we have to fix that. And in order to fix that, we have to actually calculate how tall this message list is. So we should somehow calculate the height of the message list. Now down here we are actually measuring the text that we are drawing, and we can actually get the text with, yes, this is the text height already here. So we can actually set here int message list height is 0, and then we can say that the message list height plus equals the text height. And then we will have in the end the height of the message list. But we need the scroll height up here. So we should kind of have this separately. We should separately measure the text and separately draw it. But let's actually see, if we say here that if the current scroll is less than what? If it is less than minus the message list height, which means that we have scrolled up all the way the whole height of the message list. But that is not actually the number we want. We want it to be, let's call it max scroll. And in max scroll is going to be that plus the height of the scissor area. So actually the height here. So we will add to that the height. Perhaps that is the correct thing. So then we can say current scroll is 0. No, it's not 0, it is the max scroll. Let's see if this works, because we still are in the loop, so perhaps it will still work. So now if we scroll down here, it's working. I think that I'm scrolling, but it stops there. But because we have that scroll animation, it like goes back, but I think it goes back too much. So I will actually add here in our loop, or after the loop, that this is the last hello. And I will also add a first hello. So I can see that we can hit first hello now, and we actually never get to the last hello. So this is not correct. So max scroll is more than that. I mean less because it's minus. So how do we calculate this? So if the scroll is the UI gap, then we are at the top. So I guess we should add the UI gap here at first. And then from that we will subtract the height of the message list. So if we would subtract the height of the message list, then it would be completely disappeared. So we have to move it down by the height of the area. That should be correct. Why is it not correct? It is not correct. What if I just add something here? It is still not working. So what is the problem? It does not allow me to go past that. And that is interesting. It should, if I just keep adding to this. Okay, so I have to, in fact, subtract from it. So if I subtract, let's say 200 pixels, then can we scroll down more? Maybe, it's hard to tell. Let's do 700 pixels. Yes, we can scroll more. Is my logic wrong here? Should I subtract the height? Because this is such a big number now. If I add 900, then I still cannot do it. What if I add 9,000? Then I can go wherever I want. So, wait a minute. If we subtract the message list height, it should disappear completely. And then we add the height. So what if we don't add the height? What if we do just this? It's still not going down there. That is so weird, because we have the message gap as well. We have to add the message gap here too. So now if we do this, then it in fact disappears there. And then if we add the height, then it should work exactly properly. So we get the last hello. Okay, so math actually works if you do it properly. So now you can scroll, and it actually looks nice, because if we try to scroll, it kind of bounces like this, just like on the smartphone. Okay, scrolling is done. We don't have a scroll bar, but we can implement such a thing later. But now the bigger problem here is, what if we have a message that is very long? If we say this is a very long message that should word wrap when it goes to the end of the screen, what will happen? And what if we in fact add like a new line here? Then what will this look like? It will look like this. So I need to have one more P here. So what do we do now? We do get the line here, but then if we go here, then it will not word wrap. So what we have to do is we have to calculate ourselves when we should do the word wrap, because there is apparently no feature like this in Raylib directly. So let's try and implement. So right now we are using drawTextX. So let's implement our own function called drawTextWrapped. And we are going to pass in the width into this function. So let's create this function. Void drawTextWrapped. And we are going to draw text X in there, and we have to take all of the arguments that this takes. So font, text, vector2, font size, spacing, and so on. Or do we actually need all of those things? So font, message, position, message, font size. We don't have to pass in these ones because those come automatically. Or perhaps it's better to pass them in anyway. So let's do this. We don't pass in the width here, but here we will pass in int width. And then what do we have? We have const char star text, and we have a vector2 of the position, and we have a float font size, and we have float spacing, and we have a color tint. So we just pass these along. Tint, spacing, font size, position, and text, and the font, which we have to also pass. Font. So what should we then do? Well, we are here actually measuring the text already. And what is the reason for this? The reason is that we can then move the Y position down automatically. So perhaps the drawTextWrapped should return a vector2 of the size. So let's say that vector2 text size is going to be that. And we can move this inside of the function. And we have to move these after this one. And this is not going to be void anymore. It is going to be vector2. And we are going to return this text size. And this is going to be text. And this is going to be font size. And this is going to be spacing. But we are not going to measure the whole text. We have to go character by character and see when we run out of space in the width. Now, doing this seems so wrong for a web developer, because if you would do this in JavaScript in the browser, it would be slow as hell. But I guess when we're running in C, we are at the level where we have to do this kind of thing. Because I guess the browser is doing this. When you add some text to a div element with a specific width, it will render one by one all of the characters, and it will see where it would go over, and then it will change the line. And it is happening in the background. But as a web developer, you don't have to care about that. But as a C developer, you need to care about that. So let's try to do this. And what am I doing? Not if, for. So we are going to iterate over the text. So let's say int text index equals 0. And while the text index is less than the text length, and let's calculate the text length. So int text length is strlen of the text. And we are going to do text index plus plus. Now we should also have a line index line index and a line buffer. So let's create a char star, or just char line buffer with line max len. And let's set this to a null character. And let's define line max len. Let's say define line max len. It's going to be 124. Maybe it's a very short line, but it's okay. We are going to tweak this later. And then we are going to have an int line index, or line buffer index. It's a very long name for an index, and it will be 0. I'll just call it line index. And then for every letter, we are going to strcat. So we are going to concatenate into the line buffer the character. So in fact, we're not going to use strcat. We are just going to say line buffer of the index, line index, will be the text of the text index. So this is the character in the text, and we're going to set that into the line buffer at the current position in the line. And then I guess we have to say line buffer, line index +1 is going to be a null character, so that it will be a valid C string. And why are we getting an error here? Line buffer may not be initialized. Well, I am initializing it here. What is wrong with this line? Okay, I added an extra thing here in the definition again, so I should not have an equal sign there. So now it works. So now we should have in the line buffer the first character of the text in the first iteration of this loop. And then we can measure that text. So let's do this. Text size is measure text x, where we will pass in the line buffer. So we will check how long is the line. And int line width will be text size.x, and int line height will be text size.y. And then we can say this: if the line width is greater than the width, which is the limit of our area, then what is going to happen is we are going to draw the line, draw the line and then move to the next line. So we are going to draw text x, which will be the line buffer. We'll draw the line buffer. But since the line width is greater than the width that we already went over, so we have to set the line buffer at the line index to a null character. So we'll terminate the string already in the previous one. But then, of course, we lose this character that we dropped. So we have to take it into account the next time. So we are then going to say that the text index minus. So we're going to go back to the previous letter. But also, if the character is a new line, we need to move to the next line. So we have to say, or the line buffer line index equals a new line. And this is actually it's a character of new line. If it's a new line character, then we are going to draw the line. And we have to say, in case it is not a new line, then we will go back to the previous character, because we don't want to print a new line ever. We only move down a line, if that makes any sense. And then what we have to do is we have to say position dot y plus equals text line height, so that then the next line will be drawn under this line. Now we are using a lot of these braces here, and usually when you use braces, you are going to have some issues with segmentation faults. So we probably should have some tests check that it doesn't go over the max line length. So I guess we could say something like, if line index is greater than line max len -1, I believe, then we are just going to break. And let's do something like f print s std error and error line too long, something like this. So at least we know if something goes wrong and we don't get a segmentation fault. But of course we are going to stop drawing the line at that. And should it in fact be 2, since we are doing +1 to end the character? So the length, I believe, includes the null character. So I believe that is going to work. And here we have the same thing again, and here we have the same thing. So that should fix that. Well, it's going to tell us if something goes wrong, and it will not segfault, hopefully. And we are going to return text size, but we will in fact return vector2 of what? Here we are drawing all the messages, so we want to return a vector2 where we have the width of the line, which is going to be, I guess we can just return the width, because we're not actually using the width. And we can also set, maybe we can actually just return the position, because we are incrementing the y of the position with the line height. And the position is passed in here, which here is the position of x and y, which is not correct. We don't want that. We want only the height of this message. So let's return a vector2 with the width and the text height. Let's do this. And let's add here text height plus equals line height. So then we can have another one here, int text height is 0. And then every time we draw a line, we add to the text height the line height. And we might want to add some spacing there, but let's see how this will look. Let's try and compile this and see how many errors we get. No errors, but the screen is black and it is not responding. So what did we do? We probably went to an infinite loop somewhere because we are not adding to the line index. Can we comma separate here line index plus plus? Apparently we can. So we add to both of them, but we have to zero it out here. So here we have to say line index is 0 because we have to go back to the first character. Okay, so let's build and run this, and we are still in some kind of loop and we have black background. What is going on? So I guess we are getting into a loop here and we are never ending the drawing. So let's see. Text size is draw text wrapped. So let's just add a printf here and let's add text index is d and let's text index. And let's see if it actually is repeating this now. Text index 46 is repeating. Okay, so is this 46 characters long? Our text somewhere? It is not. A new line, okay. So we are stopping at the new line. So why is that? If it is a new line, then we are going to set it to 0 and we are going to draw it, and line index is 0. Interesting. I am setting this to 0 here, but then I'm using it again. So I might move this into like is new line, and bool is new line is that. And then I can use the same thing here. If not is new line, then we do this. So now it should work. And look at this. We are working actually, almost. But we are stopping here. So we are still printing these indices here. So we can remove this. So let's see again, what is happening there? We are drawing until the new line, but then we stop. So what if we do this? Okay, we are actually wrapping now, but something weird is going on. So it appears, we are not drawing the last part. That is the problem. So after it wraps, we are not drawing that. So after this loop, after we have gone through all of these characters, we should then draw the last line if there is still a line left. Now actually we don't have to do it after this loop. We can do it in here. So if the line is too long, or if the character is a new line, or the text index is the same as the text length -1, right? Then we are going to do this. And I guess this is also if we are at the last character. So let's call this is last character. And bool is last character is that. And if it's not new line and it is not is last character, then we should draw it. And now we are drawing it, but why is there an H there? Is that, yes, that's a bug. We always draw the H, Y. But we're actually word wrapping now. Well, not really word wrapping. We are wrapping at the character, but still we are wrapping. That's pretty cool. So, and we are not drawing the last character, so we have last hell. So we should also say if not is last character, then the line buffer index, line index will be empty. So we are not going to zero out the last character. Now, I have a little bit too many if statements here. I don't really like that, but let's see if it works. So now we have a last hello here, but every line gets an H for some reason. So let's see what the problem is there. The problem is that we are setting line index to 0, but we are adding to it in the end of the loop. So we should set it to -1. So now it works. We have word wrapping. So if I resize the screen, we are wrapping the text automatically. And we can also scroll, and the scroll works even with the wrapped text. So now we can scroll very long. And then if we go back, then we can again scroll back up. So let's try this with actual ChatGPT. So if I am going to remove our loop here with the sample messages, let's do like this, and let's compile it again, and let's say hello, and we get a message back. Now we screwed up somehow our UI gap here. It's too long up there. But what if I say write hello world in C? Then we get hello world in C, and it looks nice, and it will actually word wrap this as well. And if I say write a letter to my boss telling him I quit, then we are going to get a letter. And here is the letter, which looks very interesting. But yes, we are actually word wrapping again. And again, it is not quite word wrapping, but it is wrapping. And we can scroll, and it works very nicely. So probably instead of looping through every character, we should loop through every word and do the same thing. So could we actually do that real quick here for the end of today's video? I will take a small break, and then I am going to implement that. Alright, I took a short break, and now I am ready to implement word wrapping with actual words. So one thing we could do is we could use the strToc function to tokenize the text such that it will basically convert all the spaces into null character, and then we could like loop through all the words instead of all the letters. But while I was taking a break, it occurred to me that I could actually still go character by character, and I could save the position of the latest space, and then when we go over the width, we would then go back to the previous space and print the line up till that point, and then continue again from the space. So let's try and do that. So if we would save here, let's say an int of space position, let's set it at 0. And then we could say if isSpace, is there a function isSpace? I saw someone using isSpace, but there's no function like this. Let's see if there's actually something like this. C isSpace. There is isSpace, but how do I use it? Maybe I have to include something. C type, okay. So I am going to include C type. Include C type dot h. And now I will have isSpace. Yes, and it is actually a macro. So if the character at this given index is space, then we are going to set the space position to text index. And then what we can do in our check if the width is too long, we can, instead of going back 1, we are going to set the text index to the space position, maybe +1. So no, because we will increment the text index. So we will set it to space position. And instead of removing the last character, we are going to set the character at the space position to a null character. And basically what that will do is it will make the draw text X stop at the space. And then the next iteration of this loop, we are going to start at the character that is after the space position. Let's see if that works. So if I build and run this again, and I say something, write hello world in C, then we get this. And if we make this smaller, then in fact it is almost working. So we are printing a new line here, but we are also printing the original. So whoa, what happened there? So let's see what is wrong. Let me run this again. I cannot tell what is the issue. And I should probably, again, add some example text so I don't have to make a request every time. But this now works. So how does that work? Okay, there it screws everything up. If it cannot fit even one word there, then it gets stuck. So we have to figure that thing out. But why did it print the text still? Was it just that if I said write hello world in C, do we have only one word? No, it's working, but then it stops. Why? What is the problem with this? Why does it work up here, but then down here it does that? It's because of the new line. So wait a minute. Space position. If it's a new line, we should print the line and move it down. Okay, and this should also not happen. We should not set the space position to a null character if it's a new line. Wait a minute. So what does this do? It ends the line buffer at the space position. But if it's a new line, then the space position will be the current position. And in fact, okay, this is the problem. I should not save the text index, I should save the line index, because I'm changing the line position here. And again, okay, I have to save them both. Because I have to go back in the text index, the original text, back to the place where there was a space. But I also have to cut the line buffer at the space. So I have to save both. So space, let's do text space position and line space position, and this is going to be line index. And here I have to say int line space position is 0 and text space position is 0. And here I will set the line buffer, and here I will set the text. So perhaps that will work. Let us try it. If I say hello, then this still works. Now I guess this worked previously because this is the first, yes, because this is the first line in this message. But if I say write hello world in C, it will write it, and now this seems to be working as well. So let's see when we get to printf, it still works perfectly. But again, if we don't fit anything, then we get screwed up. So let's fix that issue. So where does that problem come from? Let's say if the font size was so big that even one letter doesn't fit, then we would add the text, we would measure the line buffer, which would have one character, and the line width will be bigger than the width, assuming there was a huge character. So then what we would do is we would set the line buffer line space position to a null character, and line space position would be 0. So the first character would be a null character. So there would be nothing in the line buffer, so we would not draw anything. And we would set the text index to 0, but then we would increment it by 1, and we would go to the next one. And then we would go here again and check the next letter, and if that didn't fit either, then we would still go to the next. So that shouldn't be a problem. But because we would ultimately make a text index that is, no, wait, space position is still 0. So then for the next character, we would again go to space position 0, which would then go to the second letter again, and okay, so that's the problem. So let's set it to -1 so that we know that we don't have a space position yet. And then when we use the space position, we need to check that it is not -1 because we don't want to get the negative index here. So if line space position is greater than -1, we are going to do this. Otherwise, we still have to cut the line buffer or make sure that there will be a null character in there. Okay, so we only do that if we have a space and it is not the last character. So I guess I can just say if both of these are true, then we are going to do this. And here we will set the text index to the text space position if it is not -1. So if line space position is greater than -1, then we are going to do this. Otherwise, we are going to just do text index --, because we still want to get the character that we removed up here. But here we don't remove it. What are we doing? Yes, we want to remove the last character. Exactly. So we do have two separate if statements here. So here's what we do. If it is greater than -1, then if it is not the last character, then we cut the line buffer at the space. If we have a space position, if we don't have a space position, then we set the line index, the last character, to a null character. And then we have to minus minus. Okay. And I believe that this thing should be for the whole if statement. So if we are in the last character, then we will always print the last character. So we don't want to make it null. So if it's not the last, then if we have a space position, then we set the space position to the null character, essentially cutting the line at the space. If we don't have a space, then we remove the current character. And we should probably set here or somewhere the space position back to -1. Probably down here. So line space position is -1 and text space position is -1. Well, I guess the text space position is still fine, but line space position has to be reset because we don't have a line anymore. So let's build and run, and let's see if this works now. This still works, and we can resize it, and it works. And what if we go here, then it will actually behave just like the Chrome browser actually does when you go very small. So it will just split at the character. But there's some position still that crashes our system. So I wonder if that is related to the UI. Well, actually we get a segmentation fault if we go too small. So it is actually related to this. So when does that happen? Probably when we can't even fit one character. So here already we crashed. So why do we get stuck? It doesn't actually crash, it gets stuck in the loop. So probably it's because we have only one character, and then this is not true, this statement, then we are going to remove the character, so there's no characters. So we need to do something like text index is text length -1, or the length, or actually just line index. If line index is 0, that means that's the first character. Okay, so let's in fact do that. Bool is first character equals to line index is 0. So we also add here if it is not the last character and it is not first character. And here we do the same thing. If it is not the last character and it is not the first character, then we don't do that. So let's see if that fixes it. Hello. And if we go down here, then if it is the first character, we are not going to do anything. So that actually fixes it, but we still get the segmentation fault from the calculation of the UI. Maybe the drawing of the text box. So the bounds are calculated from the render width minus the UI gap times 2 minus sidebar width. But if it's too small, then that's going to be a negative number, so it's not going to work. So one thing we could just do to fix this is that we could set the minimum width. We would set window min size, and we could set like 800 by 600. So if we now build it, then we can't actually make it that small. It can only be 800 by 600. So that will essentially fix it. So if we now say hello, then we will get the answer, and it is properly word wrapped. And if we say write hello world in C, then it will write hello world in C. And it is also word wrapped, and we can scroll it. Great. And it is responsive. That is amazing. Now the final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fix the spacing up there. Because there should be only one UI gap there, but there is more than that. So message list draw. So, okay, it's because of the scrolling. Because we say UI gap plus current scroll. But I set the current scroll to UI gap here. So I'm going to remove it from here. And I will set the current scroll to UI gap. Well, that doesn't really make sense. I want it to be 0. And if the current scroll is greater than 0, then it will be 0. Let's do that. So now if I say hello, then it's up there. What? No, yeah. So it will be UI gap plus current scroll. But then the current scroll will be 0. So now it's up there and it works. And if we say, write a poem about a programmer, then it will write the poem, and then we can actually scroll this and it works. Great. Now we should scroll down automatically when we get a new message, and all kinds of stuff we should do. And let me know in the comments what kind of stuff should we do in the next video. But today's video will end here. Thank you very much for watching, and make sure to subscribe to my channel if you want to see the next video, and leave me a comment and a like, and I will see you in the next one.